Hello everyone, welcome to StudyTravel TV Live, a show of news, statistics and opinion. I'm Matthew Knott, news editor of StudyTravel Magazine.
Hello everyone, I'm Nicola Hancock, editor of StudyTravel Magazine. Before we get started, for the best viewing experience, please put the call-in side-by-side speaker view. You'll see an icon in the top right corner where you can select the view.
We are delighted to welcome you all today to this episode of StudyTravel TV Live. In today's broadcast, we'll begin with a news story, and then we will be joined by our guests this week, Robin Adams, President of Centre of English Studies North America and President of IALC, and William Herrera, Director of Estudiantes, Embajadores, and President of Mexican Agency Association, AMTE.
If you have any questions for the presenters or guest speakers or comments on the stories, please post them in the chat box and we will read them out at the end. A big thank you to the sponsor of this episode, Felka.
Okay, let's take a look at our first story. Canada's international student population is booming after a record year in 2022, according to data from Immigration, Refugees and Citizenship Canada, or IRCC, which shows that there were 807,750 study permit holders in the country at the end of last year, 31% more than the previous year and 26.6% more than in 2019.
India accounted for the largest cohort at 319,130 students, a 47.4% increase compared with the end of 2021. There were also large increases for the Philippines, Nigeria, Hong Kong, Colombia and Brazil.
Meanwhile, 551,405 new study permits were issued in the 2022 calendar year, a 24.1% increase compared with 2021, which was the previous record. This was more than double the total of study permits issued in 2016.
India alone accounted for 41% of permits issued in 2022, by some distance the most issued to one nationality in a single year. By sector, 430,760 permits were granted for post-secondary study, while 82,000 were issued for secondary or below study.
In surveys of agents and students in recent years, Canada has regularly scored highly in terms of post-study work rights and migration potential. And a survey of more than 40,000 post-secondary students in 2021 by the Canadian Bureau for International Education found that 59.4% intended to apply for permanent residence eventually.
So at this point, we'd like to introduce our guests, William and Robin. Hello.
Hello, Nicola. Very happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us both. So, Robin, was this a year, your experience of 2022, what we've just been covering there? How are things looking for this year?
Well, Nicola, I think, those numbers have to be put into context. I think that they are representative of what's been happening in the post-secondary and the secondary sector, but not necessarily reflective of what's been happening in the private language sector. And, I think that the situation with visa rejections and, a lack of access to work rights for ESL students, those are having a negative impact on the ESL sector. So, whereas we were quite happy with a 90% of 2019 rate in 2022, I know many schools in the private sector were sitting more at sort of 70, 75%. So there's still a long way to go.
Thank you, Robin. And so this data relates to, as you just sort of indicated, study permit holders, and English language providers will welcome students on other visa streams, including visitors and so on. So what proportion of your students usually come on a study permit?
I would say it's about 30%.
Okay. And William, there were 10,405, I think, Mexican study permit holders in Canada at the end of the year, an increase of about 7.2% over 2021 and 66% over 2019. So what's the attraction of Canada for Mexican students? And do you think this growth is going to continue?
Well, the last survey we did, I think the trend for 2023 is going to stay this way. Canada has been, for the last years, the #1 destination for Mexicans in everything, in language, and also for post-secondary university pathways. I think the Canadian government and also the Canadian schools and university and colleges have done a really good job in promoting in Mexico. So I think that trend of having the possibility to work and also to the possibility to immigrate eventually, it kind of opens the possibility and attracts a lot of students.
Thank you, William. And Robin touched on sort of visa issues just there. Have Mexican agencies encountered any problems with study permits for Canada in the last year?
No, usually Mexicans are very well. Obviously, during the pandemic, we had the usual problems that we had. We had the closed offices, and we had to go to other countries to get the visa permits. But right now, I think it's back to normal, and the rate of rejections in Mexico is very low.
Good news.
Great, thank you. And Robin, we've seen a significant bounce back, certainly in visas issued for several destinations, but it would appear that Canada has experienced the highest growth. So why do you think this might be?
Yeah, again, though, I think that's really representative with the post-secondary and secondary markets that, you know, for private language schools, many of our members are talking about you know, the challenges of getting the student visas. And I was just in Brazil, and you know, agencies are you know, really struggling getting visas for private language schools. So, you know, I think that the government has been working hard to increase the number of not only visa officers, but support staff as well. There was a significant contraction that has been addressed, and certainly, you know, as more and more support staff have been trained, you know, the increases are tangible. But again, we're still sort of seeing, I think, a significant difference between the reality for the post-secondary sector and for private language.
Thank you. And is there any concern in this wider international education industry in Canada, or sort of government circles, perhaps, that that Canada might have become too reliant on one source country? India, we know, is not really an ESL market, but they accounted for 41% of study permits issued last year, and about 40% of all students in Canada at the end of 2022.
Yeah, I think this is a real challenge for the universities and colleges. You know, having such a huge over-reliance on the Indian market. It used to be China. I think the Bonard stats used to show China was the #1 market, and there are indications that will return in 2024. But I think that, you know, for us, and I think for any successful business, you need to make sure that you are as diverse as possible. For CES, for example, Italy is our #1 source market. So very, very different context.
Thank you. Okay, let's move on to the next story. Next up, Australia has confirmed that extended post-study work rights for international students will commence July 1st this year. In eligible study fields, bachelor students can receive 4 years, and master's students can get 5 years, while all doctoral students, regardless of subject, will be eligible for 6 years.
The government has released the list of study fields that will qualify for the extensions, which it said were targeted at areas of workforce need, such as health, teaching, engineering, and agriculture. It is estimated that around 45% of students enrolled in the last 4 years will be eligible for these.
Education Minister Jason Clare said it would boost Australia's attractiveness as a study destination, and Association Universities Australia welcomed the move, highlighting that prior to COVID, only around 16% of graduates typically stayed to work.
Meanwhile, the government confirmed that from July 1st, the work limit while studying for international students will increase from the pre-COVID limit of 40 hours per fortnight to 48 hours per fortnight. International education associations welcome the move, which will equate to 3 8-hour shifts per week.
Since the beginning of last year, the work cap has been temporarily suspended to help fill labour shortages in the economy, but the government previously confirmed that this would end in June.
So, William, if we could come to you first this time, will this make Australia more attractive in the Mexican market, do you think?
Yes, totally. I think Australia before the pandemic was a rising destination. They were doing a lot of really good job in terms of promoting different cities and different programs. Mexico has the visa, the category number 1, so tier 1, so it's fairly easy to get a visa as well. Unfortunately, with the pandemic and with the decision of the government to close completely the destination, right now, many of those agents that were specializing in Australia and New Zealand, in that part of the world, they had to expand and they have to extend their offering basically Canada. That's why Canada has grown so much. But right now, the government is doing government in combination with agents and also combination with different institutions are doing a really good job in terms of promoting back again Australia, the destinations, and obviously this opportunity to work is very attractive. Again, this is something that makes very attractive Canada. So this is something that would make put, I think, the balances and advantages right there as well.
Thank you. And Robin, just as William touched on there, it does seem like Australia and Canada are in competition to offer the most competitive post-study work packages for international students. Are you concerned that with this move, Australia will take share from Canada, or do you think the two destinations will leave other destinations behind, especially with rumours of restrictions coming in for the UK?
I definitely think that Canada and Australia are in competition for significant share of the international student market. And I think it also is representative of the fact that both countries have a demographic situation where we have an aging population, reduced numbers in the workforce, smaller birth rates, all that. So, I think governments have recognized that, the ideal immigrant is one that has gone through the education system in their own countries, so that there's no issue in terms of recognizing their education qualifications and then getting them to be active in the workforce.
Okay, thank you. Let's take a look at our next story, and we're going to the pathway sector, where Navitas has announced the signing of an agreement to acquire study groups operations in Australia and New Zealand.
Through the deal, Navitas will take over Taylor's College Sydney, which offers progression to the University of Sydney, Taylor's College Auckland, which prepares students for the University of Auckland, and the University of Waikato College.
Navitas CEO Scott Jones said that the deal consolidated the position of Navitas as the largest pathway provider in the region, while for Study Group this will represent a withdrawal from Australia and New Zealand.
In other pathway sector news, Study Group announced an extension of its agreement with the University of Surrey in the UK, which first launched in 2007.
And Kaplan announced an agreement with the University of Victoria in Canada to recruit international students for a range of undergraduate and postgraduate programs.
In this a period of consolidation, or is this a period of consolidation in the pathway sector, do you think, William? It has been reported by Sky News, actually, that Oxford International Education Group is one of the bidders to buy Cambridge Education Group, which operates the on-campus pathway brand from private equity firm Bridgepoint.
I think it is. I think that we were seeing in the market. I think that the big companies are either partnering or acquiring the smaller ones to make a stronger offer as well. So I think that in the future we'll keep on seeing that, and hopefully we'll have a good diversity and not just 2 or 3 different companies. But what we've seen is that everybody has kind of the same strategy, just acquiring something that has a niche and probably just making their offer a little bit more attractive or extending into that niche market. So yes, I think we are living in that situation right now.
And William, is there much demand in Mexico for these kind of, sort of pathway programs in the English-speaking higher education destinations leading on to undergraduate and so on?
Yes, the university pathway is something that is growing in Mexico as probably the one that is growing most, but it's attached to what we just talked before. It's attached to the possibility of working and also the possibility of immigration. So once you are deciding as a student, deciding where you want to study, and probably if in the UK, you're limited in working, or probably you're not able to get a post work experience visa after your studies, probably that will limit your option in order to decide whether to go to Europe, to UK in this case, compare it to Canada or compare it to Australia. So
Okay,
there's a
thank
market, but it's tied to this possibility.
Thank you, William. And Robin, the on-campus International Study Centre pathway model is quite well established in Australia and the UK, and to a lesser extent in the US. It's far less common in Canada. Is that because the language providers have stronger links, perhaps, with universities or higher education providers that more commonly operate their own prep programs, do you think?
I think the issue is the challenge in Canada for private education and public education to work together. I think that we've seen much better synergy in Australia, where public providers and private providers are able to recognize each other's strengths and able to really leverage some of the opportunities there. And hopefully we'll start seeing a greater openness in Canada and less fear about private enterprise. I think that there's still a long way to go in terms of the public recognition of the potential that private companies offer.
Interesting. Okay, thank you. We'll take one more story. And back to the English language learning sector now, this time in the UK and Australia. Firstly, in the UK, English UK has released the 2022 Q4 data from its quarterly intelligent cohort or quick scheme, which the association said shows a return to typical market patterns of junior and group ratios, and actually groups accounted for 22% of student weeks across 2022 as a whole.
For the 118 centres supplying data for both years, there was an increase of 346% in junior student weeks in 2022 Q4 compared with the same period of 2021, while adult weeks jumped by 39.7%.
Saudi Arabia was the top source market for the Q4 quarter, followed by Switzerland, Brazil, Japan, and Turkey. China and Russia remain absent from the top source country lists. English UK said forecasts of around 60% recovery of pre-pandemic levels in 2022 appeared to be quite accurate.
Meanwhile, English Australia has hailed the remarkable recovery of the ELICOS English language sector after Department of Education data showed a 155.4% increase in ELICOS course commencements in 2022, by far the highest growth of any sector.
Yes, strong growth in ELICOS commencements came from markets such as Colombia, 285%, Thailand, 976, Brazil, 419, and Spain, 724.
English Australia also presented Department of Home Affairs data on visa lodgements and grants, showing that lodgements were at a record high of 56,492 in 2022, around 50% higher than 2019 levels.
William, the Mexican ELICOS commencements in Australia last year were around 5 times higher than in 2021, albeit still below pre-pandemic levels. How are these two destinations, Australia and the UK, for your agency last year?
Compared to Canada, very low. I think the second one was Ireland. The third one was the US. Then it was Australia and UK. But I think that Australia has a lot of potential. We've seen a rise, at least in the demand of quotations, and people are interested in going abroad. So I think that Australia will. Again, I think we're still a little bit back of what we had in 2019, but we're going to be, I think, in 2023 better than what we were in 2019.
Thank you. And Robin, English UK are anticipating something like a 60% recovery of pre-pandemic numbers for 2022. Would you agree with that in terms of CES UK centres?
Yeah, I think for 2022, that's an accurate figure. But fortunately for 2023, it's very bullish. And we're seeing, 100 to 110% of 2019 levels. So I think the weaker pound is making England more affordable than ever, and I think you're going to see more students choosing Scotland and the UK as well.
Okay, good news there. Will, coming back to Canada, do you think the Languages Canada report would give a similar picture of recovery for last year, or perhaps even a little bit more?
No, I think that the average is sort of around that 70% of 2019 levels, and I think the hope is that we'll be closer to sort of 90% in 2023.
Great. Good news all round. Okay, well, that brings us up to date with the stories this week. So at this point, we'll open up to the audience to see if there are any questions for our guests or for the Study Travel team. These can be on any of the stories or topics we have just been discussing.
Just while we give people a moment to write in any questions while they have there. Robin, IALC is marking its 40th anniversary this year, so it's quite a landmark for the association. What celebrations do we have in store?
Well, thank you very much, Matthew. Yes, we're really looking forward to welcoming our members and agents to Dublin, the 13th to the 16th of April, where we'll be really kicking off the 40th celebrations there. We've got record numbers in attendance.
Good place for a party.
Indeed.
And also, William, what of AMTE planning for the next few months? What can you reveal there?
Well, actually, next in 2 weeks we have the General Assembly, where actually the Australian government is the one who's co-sponsoring the General Assembly. So that would be I'm planning to be re-elected, so I'll let you know as soon as that happens, or if not, you'll see the new president of AMTE. But so far, it looks that I'm gonna still be here for another year. And we have a certain, for next semester, we want to do some think tank here in Mexico, attracting organizations, providers, the embassies as well. So that's probably the big event for next semester.
Okay, thank you. Let's see any questions as yet. So that looks like the end of the Q&A, which brings us to the end of this week's Study Travel TV Live.
Well, thank you very much, Nicola, Matthew. We hope to see you all in Dublin.
Thank you very much, Matt, Nick.
Thank you. Well, you can visit the StudyTravel TV Live page on StudyTravel TV Network, where you can find under the magazine section of the menu. On the page, we will announce the guest speakers for the next broadcast, which is on the 22nd of March. You'll also be able to find a recording of this broadcast from tomorrow, as well as past episodes.
So yeah, that's it for today. I would like to say a very big thank you to our special guests. William, thank you for your time and insights today.
Thank you very much.
Good luck with the election as well.
And Robin, thank you for joining us again and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you so much, Nicola. It was a pleasure.
We look forward to seeing you all again very soon.
And thank you again to our sponsor this week, Felka, and to everyone for watching. Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Scott. Thank
Bye.
you. Bye-bye.